if you step outside of it and say, hey, there's something going on here, what can I do to change this? There are solutions to every problem, because you can't have a problem without a solution. And you can have a solution without problems. And this is what the mystics would say is what they call it 360-degree wisdom, which means you look at they call it the wise dome or wisdom. So when you think about the dome being 360 degrees, when you get into that enlightenment phase where you start looking at my past brought me to this moment, where's it taking me in the future? How's it interacting with my people? What am I going to do today to make this a better place? That circle of influence, that sphere of influence, that's what moves with you. And you can affect that.
Yeah, you better. Guess you want this, I want this. Everybody in this, what should have it? Stop delusions, it's in your hands. Show yourself, reveal it to them. Yeah, you better. Take the time to recognize it. And believe me, even if you tried it. You're the artist, and the mess, and happily be found the new in your hands.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Unlimited with Elisabeth Carson. Today I have a very, very special guest and a good friend of mine. Oh my gosh, it's such an honor to have you here with me, Dr. Porter. Thank you so much for being here. You are the CEO and founder of BrainTap, one of my very favorite modalities that I use that have helped me through so many different things. So thank you for agreeing to be on here with me and just being here with me today.
Certainly, anytime. I love our conversations and just getting it out to the world.
Yes. I mean, Dr. Porter, so you came up with BrainTap. Didn't you come up with BrainTap in was it the 90s, 80s?
It was in 85. I actually moved to Phoenix from Michigan, and a series of God winks, you might say, coincidences happened. And actually, a person told me I was going to meet somebody in Vegas. They actually gave me their name. Said I was going to meet them in Vegas, and I was going to transform their technology, and it was going to go across the world. So in 1986, we invented the very first portable light and sound machine. That's a whole other story. I don't know if we want to delve deep into that, but it's kind of a spooky story, you know, how the universe works. When it's birthed into this world, it gets done because it was a really wild ride, but we got it done, and I've been doing it ever since. Some people say I'm just too stupid to stop. You know, back then, could you imagine, I was like Star Trek. I was like going back in time from the future. People were using LED lights and sounds and vibration and training their brain. And we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have CDs. We didn't have the internet was out there, but it wasn't out there for the general public. And we were doing all these things. So we were nowadays we're fitting right in. But back then we were really looked at like really strange people.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. You know what? I was just talking about this last night on my live. I was like, you know, if you tell someone to go get some Reiki these days, I mean, it's way more accepted than it was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Can you imagine 50 years ago?
Yeah. My dad ran a thing in Kalamazoo, Michigan called ESP4. And he brought in some of the most bizarre, they wouldn't be bizarre today. But back then, the most bizarre, weird people. You know, our family was like considered these weirdos, you know, they were doing all these things because we got into the civil method. And we started going to the level, and then we started to see auras. We started to see our guides and teachers. And we used to have aura parties at our house. Imagine if you're in my neighborhood, you'd come over on Saturday night, we'd teach you how to see auras. You know, so that's the way I grew up.
Yes, that's really, really amazing that you were exposed to that. And I think that's, you know, is that what kind of pushed you on your journey to discover what you've discovered to create BrainTap and do the things you're doing?
Yeah, I think what happened was I was told at a very early age I wasn't very smart. I wasn't really going to make it very well. I was an artist, so I didn't really like school. I couldn't see the value in it. And then when my dad taught me the Silva method, I found out school is pretty easy. Mm-hmm. You basically get the information, you get tested on it, you get a score. So I became an honor roll student because I figured out the game. It's all a game. It's all information. And most people don't understand in this world there's two types of knowledge. There's transcendent knowledge and there's academic knowledge. And there's a lot of academic knowledge that's worthless in the real world because the real world is frequency, light, sound, and vibration. It's this transcendent knowledge, like we're talking about with spirituality, that helps you get through life. And there's a flow to it. There's an energy to it. And I think I always knew that. So the problem was I didn't understand it. But as soon as I knew I could start changing my brain, and Jose Silva actually had something called the Silva sound, which was isochronic tone, we would call it today. But at the time, it was just this weird sound they played in the back of the seminars. But everybody's brainwave would sync, and everybody started becoming more intuitive, more creative, more psychic, if you will. And through that method, basically, once you start stepping outside of the known and you step into the unknown, your brain goes crazy. And for me, I've always been a person because I was into sports. So I was a 3-sport captain in high school, and part of it was I didn't want to do it alone. So I always had teams with me. I always wanted to bring people with me. So I felt when I graduated from college, what can I do to help other people to do what I've done? And I feel like I'm still on my first day at work. That I've been doing this, even though I've been doing it 40 years, it still feels like my first day at work.
I love it. That's when you know you're walking in your passion and you're aligned with purpose and your mission. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, Dr. Porter. I kind of got pushed into my purpose and my mission recently. And it's like, everything kind of just changed all of a sudden. And the universe will do that to you to, kind of realign you into, where you're supposed to be. And thank God that I had BrainTap during my dark night, because there were some nights I couldn't sleep. Going through, something like this is very, very stressful. It's like it prevents your body goes into fight or flight. I was in shock. I lost 20 pounds when it first happened. It was just super crazy. So, I really lend a lot of like the reason why I was able to move through this so quickly. With BrainTap, it helped me sleep. If you can't sleep, you can't recover. So, can you go into the science and like why and how?
Sure. Yeah. Back in the 70s and 80s, of course, this was all metaphysics, but really it's quantum physics, right? It's not meta. This is beyond anybody because we are light beings. And so what's happening on a science level, an measure energy rate. So if I was to have an EEG and I was to measure your brain right now, hopefully it would be above 10.5. I'm sure it would be. When we're born, though, it's 18.1. So imagine this brain fully alive, active. We have all the neuron connections. And most people don't realize as we age, actually our brain unwires. It doesn't wire. People think they're wiring up their brain by learning. Unwires to learn. That's why you have to be creative. You have to think outside the box. You have to do different things, cause plasticity. So what BrainTap does using light, sound, and vibration is we're going to go back to some ancient principles. If you really do your research on yoga or Tai Chi, what they really were doing was they were preparing the human body, this biovoltaic system. We are light beings that transmit and receive energy through light. And our brain has the most mitochondria. So think of mitochondria as the solar system. In our solar system, we have the sun, we have this mitochondria at the cell level. Right now, everything they're doing around us, unfortunately, is blocking that light, whether it's stress, physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, spiritual stress. All of this stress causes the cells to go into what they call the cell danger response. So you have this immense power of energy at the cellular level that's transmitting light. But as soon as you go into that sympathetic system, like you said, you go into fight or flight, the cell has a protective coating around it. So now you're not transmitting anymore. So what we do with BrainTap is we're going to create a field. And the best way I can explain it to the listeners is if you go on YouTube and put in metronome synchronization, there's a guy that put 300 metronomes in a room and he started them at all different times. It takes about 3 minutes for all those metronomes to sync. And then about 3 minutes later, one will go on sync. And they'll all follow that rhythm. The universe has a rhythm, a cycle, a cadence. And so we are part of that rhythm, cycle, and cadence. So relationships, jobs, marketing, whatever you're doing, everything has a cycle. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is forever. So, they say the only thing we can count on is change. So how do we adapt? How do we improvise? Well, these things take energy, right? It's all about energy. So if most people think they are these, blood and guts and vomit that we walk around in our human body, this is our
Yes.
We're inside there because when we die, we lose 3/4 of an ounce. What is that 3/4 of an ounce? Why did we lose any weight when we die?
Right.
It's because the essence or the energy of who we are went into another dimension or went to where I don't know where it goes. I hopefully before I die, I will know that. And like Bill Murray in Caddyshack, he said he was blessed with the being able to have full knowledge at his deathbed. Right now we don't know. It's like, where do we go when we go into the deepest realms of sleep where we don't remember? or we come back. We're going into these other dimensions. We're going into these other worlds. So with BrainTap, we're going to use light, just like synchronizing those metronomes. We're going to use light to do it. So we're going to do that in two ways with light. Through our eyes, we're going to use earth frequencies. Now, this is something we knew. It's just part of our, so part of a community 1,000 years ago. At the end of the day, we would meet at the campfire and we would talk about our day. We would say, hey, I went hunting, I went gathering, I went, whatever. And we'd have this talk. What we didn't realize was that fire was burning in front of us. That fire is crackling at 10 hertz frequency. That's alpha. It's down regulating your nervous system. It's infrared light.
Yes.
So what's happening is, if you've ever been frightened, that fire is mesmerizing me. Well, that's because that fire is crackling at 10 hertz. Now, what does that do biologically to us? Because there's no system of the body that's disconnected. It's like beads on a string. So now we have this frequency response. So now when we start to build up alpha activity, the brain starts to create the neurotransmitters needed. Now, neurotransmitters, for those that aren't aware or familiar, there's 54 of them, but these are connectors in the brain that help us to recover memories, to become creative, whatever we need to do. So alpha is most associated with like acetylcholine, norepinephrine, those kind of things. These are feel good, happy, when you fall in love, you're in the timeless world, when you're with some. So we can do that within ourselves. Now, every day when you go to sleep, we should be going through those cycles. Now, when we drop into theta, and I'd like to tell people, when we do the research in India, at Ames Bhopal, which is probably the world's leading researchers in meditation, I remember Varun saying to me, he says, you're cheating, because I took a person on stage and I showed a guru's brain, and then I took somebody who never meditated and I showed them I can get that person to mimic that brain within 7 minutes. Now remember, the metronomes took 3 minutes. The human brain to synchronize takes 7 minutes. So once 7 minutes, we have this increased alpha and theta. Now we also can do it with gamma now. We proved that we can increase the gamma brain. So we're creating the field. We all have the field, depending on what your belief system is. Some people believe that only holy men have these auras around them, these light emissions, but every one of us, even you and I, across the computers, we're doing it. In fact, I just read an article because the research program at MIT that showed the brain emits electrical activity 10,000 miles away, 10,000 miles. So when you think of thought, and they're actually proving that there's a field of energy that we all tap into. This is science saying this, but let's say you're out of phase with it. Now that information's still there, just like the internet's still there. I love it when somebody says to me, the internet's never down. Your connection to the internet's down. So think of your infinite. You're always connected to the infinite. Now you might disconnect from the infinite because of fear, frustration, anxiety, and these things all have something in common: lack of breathing. So within BrainTap, we use trigger biological system. We're going to use sound to get the nervous system engaged. These are chronic beats. Then we're going to use words, because words can change up to 2,300 gene expressions. So all this information is going in. Now, even though on a conscious level, we can't comprehend or figure out what's going on, your subconscious, did you ever see the movie with Dustin Hoffman where he's a savant and they drop the toothpicks on the ground and he says 2,731 toothpicks, and he goes, that he counted them. Well, that's a savant. They have access to that kind of mathematical ability, but the reality is that we all have that. But our brain is really good at omitting information. Just like if you and I were to live near a train station or an airport or a dump, and we might not smell the dump, we might not hear the airplanes, we might not feel the trains vibrating, because our brain says that's not a problem. It's going to be there forever, so let's just admit it. But if you're new to it, our reticular activating system turns it on. So we're going to use, with BrainTap, we're going to use that system. And each time we use it, we're going to train the brain to adapt, improvise, and overcome. Because it's not about today, because I like to tell people, and God here actually taught me this from Austin, Texas. He said, there is no there. Everybody wants a graduation. Like, so we're going to get in front of a group of people, they're going to give me this graduation. You've now enlightened, Dr. Porter. Well, you're already enlightened. You can't be anything more than you are. The problem is you don't know. So when we have those mountaintop experiences, or we have those they're within us. So what we're going to do with BrainTap is we're going to take you through a exercise. We call it brain fitness. So we're going to have emotions. We're going to have good times. We're going to have bad times. We're going to have sadness. We're going to have joy. The secret is not to believe any of it, because you're not any of that.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
you're not the having these experiences. So what? How are you learning, developing, and growing from that? Because this isn't the first time you've been through this. You know, you all your whole life, if you really think back on your life, you have a trail that you've left. In that trail, you can see, oh, you know what? This cycle seems to be repeating itself. I've done this before. Now,
Mhm.
what our job is to figure out the cycles that aren't working for us and break them, to
Mhm.
change them. It's energy. We call this neuroplasticity. So there's
Yes.
neural pruning and neuroplasticity. So what we know with light, and this, then I'll let you we'll go on, but with BrainTap, think of light as a way to stimulate mitochondrial energy. Right now, your body is producing ATP, which is the currency of the body to repair and heal itself. So this is the base system, the biological system. It's all being ran without you. Only 5% of what you're doing, and in fact, I would say it's less than that, but Bruce Lipton says 95% of your body is being controlled by your subconscious. But you're not controlling. You're not controlling the 75 trillion cells of your body. You're not controlling how the lymph system is moving toxins out of the cells. You're not controlling how much you blink. All these things are happening without you. So there's a system in place, a higher order of thinking that we need to tune into. Because if we ask it, that intelligence to work in our life, things become easy. Because what we do is not that difficult. It seems difficult when we're doing it. And, you know, so when you're in the BrainTap program, that energy goes into the cell. That mitochondria, instead of producing one ATP molecule, we know with red light therapy, this is why biohacking is so important when people do this. With red light therapy and infrared light therapy, that cell absorbs that light. That cell, which your brain and your eyes have the most mitochondria of any other area of the body. So when you think about that mitochondria absorb light energy, transmit that light energy through your body as codes to tell your body what to do. Now, instead of spitting out one ATP molecule, imagine a little guy sitting in the middle of the cell. Every time it spins around to the number 12, it's spitting out 32 molecules.
Mm.
So imagine you're now harvesting 32 times more energy during a BrainTap session than you would if you were on your own. And some people say, well, I can do that on my own. I can tell you right now, I've scanned 30,000 brains over the last 10 years since we've had the technology to do it. And I've only seen about 4 people that were able to do it on their own. Because what we showed in the lab, and this was with people non-meditators. So I'm not talking about if you're a master meditator and you've done all these things, it might be totally different for you. But the average person out there walking in the streets, as soon as they close their eyes, they're going to shut down up to 30% of their brain circuits. When you need them the most. Remember earlier when I said yoga and Tai Chi, these are all to bring energy into the brain because it takes energy to sleep. It takes energy to problem solve. But the energy to be creative, the energy to be in love, this energy flows naturally. But all of the resistive energies, people tend not to breathe. They tend not to build energy. Like if you have a good cry, which I'm sure everybody listening at one time or another, you had an experience where you just had to cry. Then after you're done crying, you go, oh man, I got to take a nap. Because it takes a lot of energy. You just released all that energy. So your body has to replenish those stores of energy. And it does that by going through the cycles of brain waves. So BrainTap actually mimics that recycling program because energy is not found in the food you consume. That's like the base energy. It's like, but the real energy you get is from your breath.
Mhm.
From every breath you take brings more energy to your body than the sandwich you eat at lunch. So you just need to, and most people don't breathe right. So we're going to teach them how to breathe. We're going to teach them how to visualize, because also, whether you know it or not, every person listening, you're predicting your future. You're not predicting it, you're creating it because you have an infinite field of possibility around you, and you get a chance to interact with the field.
Yes.
And this field is being proven by science. It's not just me saying it like in the 80s, this physical whack job. It's saying it's not. Science is actually proving. They've actually proved that a positive person actually affects their DNA in a different way than a negative person does. So we need to stay positive no matter what's happening to us. You're going through the dark night of the storm, which we all have to go through. It's unfortunate, but it's part of the cycle, right?
Yes.
Just like we have time at night. So we go through the cycle. What are we learning from that dark night of the soul? Well, we're learning our superpowers.
Yes.
We're going to need them the next day. So if we cower away from, they've actually shown in science that if we shy away from our challenges, we actually become less resilient. But if we look at our challenges as our threats as challenges, we become more resilient. We actually build the resources necessary to handle the next crisis. So it all evolves one on the other. So the more you, let's say, deny those things, the less power you have. The more you accept them and realize, hey, this is part of my experience, this is part of my growth, and you're not done yet. You know, you're not even in the cocoon stage. You're still the caterpillar walking around on the ground. Imagine what's going to happen when you get the larva around you and you wake up in this whole new reality that you go, wow, I didn't know I was this powerful. I didn't know I could do all these things. Right? We're still evolving. Just so the listeners understand what I'm talking about. In 2015, they were doing studies with sleep, and they realized that we have a new system in the body. So imagine this: before 2015, there isn't a physiology book in the world before 2015 that says we have a lymphatic system in the brain.
Really?
Now they know that we have the glial lymphatic system. It was discovered in 2015. So that's like a superpower to clean our brain. Now, before all this stress, we didn't even worry about it because everybody was sleeping well. But now we have all this stress, all this anxiety, all this. So our brain isn't sleeping. So now they're trying to figure it out. So now they look at what other dormant powers, what other hidden traits do we have inside this biological system? Because they say we're only using 10%, right, of our brain's potential, but we're using 100% of our brain's capacity. So what we need to do is figure out, what are we not using? What are we not activating? That only happens through light, sound, and vibration, through frequency. It's all about frequency you're in, what energy you're using. And so that's what drives me. And I think BrainTap just gives you a way, and just so listeners understand, it's not just one and done. There's 3 different types of brain training. There's warning training to upregulate what's called SMR, your sensory motor rhythm. You have reboot sessions in the middle of the day that replenish your energy, because in the cycle of life at 2 o'clock, your body's going to drop 2 degrees every day at 2 o'clock. We're designed from the Serengeti. So imagine these biological systems around the world, no matter who you are, it all traces back to the Serengeti. So we are designed to take a nap. In the Serengeti at 2 o'clock, nobody's up running around trying to beat the stock market. They're taking a nap. You know, the lions and the zebras are sleeping. Now, because we have artificial light, we have things going on. It used to be, if you and I, like we're talking about by the fire, when that fire burned out, and you go, hey, you know what, Elisabeth, let's go get another log and watch that next log. It's not like Netflix. You know, when the log burned out, we went to bed. But nowadays, what happens is we can just turn the channel that can stimulate, you know, dopamine, cortisol, norepinephrine, and wake us up. And then we're tired before, but now a new show's on, so we get all this energy. That's our brain playing tricks on us because we're not part of the cycle of life. Because now we can artificially do it. So if we can artificially do it in a negative way, guess what? We can do it in a positive way. We just have to figure out what biohacks our bodies need to really awaken within us our true nature. Because it's not what we're seeing out there. We're being told we're these limited beings. That, you know, there's so many people that have immune dysfunction.
Yes.
And, you know, immune dysfunction is really a nervous system issue because your system is thinking all the time. And if you think you have threats all around you, which we do, but you don't know how to handle them because you're looking at them as a threat instead of a challenge, you're going to create too many white marker cells. You're going to have a runny nose. You're going to have a cough. You're going to have irritations in the body because you created it, not because it's true. It's you know, that's why, like Wim Hof, you know, Wim Hof, the guy, the breathing guy.
Yes.
They inject poisons into him, and he just does his breathing technique, and he neutralizes the poison just like they do on Dune. You know, when somebody sees the Dune, the women of Dune, they can take that poison. He's doing that right now today.
Wow.
So, yeah. They've done it in laboratory settings. They've injected him with poison. He just does his breathing. The body takes care of it. So we don't know the extent of our systems. We don't know the extent of what we can, you know, some believe that we actually have a system where we can even teleport ourselves into other dimensions, other times, other places, that there's a vehicle around us, take us in and out of space and time, you know, and people have experienced this. So, I mean, we can get really bizarre here, but the reality is that science is proving all this out, which is incredible to me. And BrainTap is just I think it's a base tool, you know, that I do it every day. Life is always happening. Life is always changing. Stress is always occurring. I don't live on Gilligan's Island where my only choice is Ginger or Mary Ann. I've got to figure out what's going on in the world. Like I can't just, it's not a binary system. We're getting into this quantum world and almost you want to call it multidimensional kind of experience that we're.
Yeah. You know what? It's like I have been talking so much about this, Dr. Porter. I've been talking so much about the magic that we all have, that we've all been, programmed that it's not even real and it's not there. But yet we have so much magic that once we change our perception of reality and change that into positivity and the challenge, right? The gifts from all of the bad experiences. There's really no bad experiences because everything is divinely happening perfectly for you, not to you. And once you can shift your perception into that, then magic literally happens and shows up in your life all the time, which is like literally what's been happening to me. It's like, just perfect alignment of different things. And now, I'm going to Bali next month to go speak at the I Am Creation Summit. And it's like all of these gifts have just been boom, 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 dropped into my life because I aligned with the challenge, looked at it like a gift, and took the lessons that I've learned to change my energy, take accountability, and move forward in a better way. And it's like showing up in my life, because in the quantum world, I'm creating that before it happens in the physical world.
Right. Some would say you've already done it. I mean, you've been through this before. So what's happening is you're just going through it again. I mean, there's actually in India, and it's talked about in Paramahansa's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, they have these leaves where they've written the lives of everybody who's going to visit the temple. And I know Dr. Vivek Sharma, who's with AIMS India too, he's one of the researchers there. He went to those leaves. They told him when he was 19 years old how he was going to meet his wife, who his children were. And he's really funny because at the end of his talks, he said, we're all dead. We've already been through this before. Somebody already knows the whole plan. So as soon as you tune into the field, you have that prescience, or you have that what we call transcendent intuition, where you start to know, and even you can't make a mistake. You can't make a bad decision. It can seem like a bad decision or a bad mistake, or maybe this relationship isn't working, or that business deal didn't work. But the reality is, just like Steve Jobs said, we can only know the past is correct when we look back at it, because we can connect the dots. But when we look forward, that's where the real mystics come in. When you can start predicting the future and knowing that you're affecting and interacting with it. And I think that's the big thing, is that the uncertainty. But as soon as we start to, like you said, ownership, as soon as you start to have ownership that you're being, and I always like to tell people, life is happening through you, not to you. So you are actually you're in the middle of the universe. So when my daughter thought she was the center of the universe, I tell her, Cherie, you're right. You are the middle of the universe for you. You're not for me, but you are for you, because we all have a center to our universe. The problem is that when we get off center, or we start to think that someone else is controlling us, or someone else is telling us what to do, there's always a choice, and that those choices will add up. Just like what happened in the UK. I don't know if you heard, but they passed a law that every doctor that died the COVID jab, they are now responsible for any deaths. So those doctors that didn't step up in the UK, they're going to be sued. We're going to see all sorts of malpractice. So because they gave away their power to the drug company, they had the choice to say no, but they were cowards, and they didn't do it. So that's going to happen around the world now, because it's all a game. Whatever's going on, who's ever playing this game with us, which I don't have all the information on that, we just got to know it's a game. We have to keep our own health up. We have to keep our own energy up. We have to keep our family close, our friends close, and and share with our community that there's a choice, there's a decision to be in grace and have energy to accomplish, because you're going to be doing something somewhere all the time. This isn't going to stop. You may not be here doing it, but you're going to be somewhere doing it. But you want to take the lessons with you and that knowledge. And right now, I think when somebody talks about being awake, what you're talking about is somebody who's awake. That not like thinking they're a herd of sheep that are being herded around. You're now the one herding the sheep. Saying, hey, it's dangerous over there. Come over here. Do this, do that. And teaching them different things. That's the next level. And so we need more people to step up into that level. That's, hey, I'm first responsibility. And then there's a power in that. Now, you can't say that out loud around other people too much because they might think you're egotistical. But when you look at yourself in the mirror, you should know, hey, you're a very powerful person. You have control today to be happy or to be sad. You can choose your emotions right now. Yes. And you can choose to look at a situation as a challenge or a threat. And, when I tell people, especially for longevity, because I know you're into that field too, when you think about longevity, they've proven that positive thinkers live 6.5 years longer than negative thinkers.
Wow. 6.5 years.
Yes. When somebody says to me, I'm asked on radio shows all the time, what's the number one thing I can do to improve my lifespan? Think positively. Negative thinking kills you. There's a book back in the 80s. It was called You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. At the time, I thought it was a joke. But the reality is you can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. That's why if you're around drainers, people that drain you of your energy, you got to get rid of them. Yes. You just got to say, hey, you're on your own journey. Go suck the energy off somebody else, because there are energy vampires out there. Remember, 54% of you and I right here is not us. It's biology. It's not us.
Yeah.
Other bugs and things in our body, our gut bugs and our brain bugs, all these things, we have to work with those systems. There are systems beyond our conscious control that we call them energy vampires or drainers. If they walk in the room and you feel their energy drop, you either need to teach them how to increase their energy so that when you come together with apology, having a good conversation, you walk away and you're floating on air. It's great. When that drainer leaves, you go, oh man, I got to go to a meditation because they just robbed me of all my life force. Those are two things that happen all the time.
Right.
Because just like those synchronizing, when you're around your friends, your biological systems are going to synchronize. That's why somebody, hey, I got a good vibe from that person, or I don't. That's why if you tune yourself up, you'll find out those people will just be repelled by you. Yeah. Some people can't even be around me. They go, you're too damn positive, Porter. What's going on? I go, well, I'd rather be positive and be disappointed every once in a while than be negative every day and miss out on my positiveness, miss out on my joy. So many people are so busy worrying about their illnesses or worrying about what's the problems in the world. We're trying to change a president. I mean, you're not going to change that system. Let them do their thing. We got to create our own system of joy and health and happiness, because those crazy people are going to do whatever they do. It doesn't matter who's in office. That's a game they're trying to get us, because if they can pull us out of our joy, and get us thinking about these stupid drama things that have nothing to, it's like watching sitcoms that if anything has a laugh track on it, I can't watch it, because that's their conditioning to respond to something, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be conditioned by that. Who's conditioning you? You need to tune in and condition yourself. If you're watching this podcast, you have awakened to a certain level. Yeah. But you have to be willing to say, this is today's level. Tomorrow is better. Every day, better, better, and better, right? So you've got to, if you think that way, we know, because science has proven it, that it will be better, because you predicted it, you created it, you discovered it, you found a way to have it. You can also say, oh, tomorrow's terrible, I'm getting old, blah, blah, blah. I just had a birthday, and they made a joke at the office. They have a little sign put up with my picture saying, I'm getting older and older every day. I did get rid of that. I mean, it was a joke for a day, because of one of my sayings. But I said, I don't want to look at that every day. I still feel like I'm the 19-year-old kid that just got out of high school and ready to go take on the world. That's me inside. Now when I look in the mirror, I go, who the hell is that guy? So we got to work on that one. But that's the way it works, right? You got to, as soon as we figure out how to, these cells, they know there's no reason for them to age. Yeah. Scientifically, there is no reason for our cells to age. Right. But because of trauma, thoughts, and toxins, they will age. But it's an energy equation again. And it all starts with the brain. So that's why I'm in BrainTap. But nutrition's important too. You need to see me at the biohacking conference. So there's so much more than BrainTap. BrainTap is one of the key things that I believe we need to do.
Yes. It's so crazy that you're talking about this, because I literally was live like 45 minutes ago on Instagram and TikTok talking about the same thing. It's like people's perception, right? So talking about politics and who's the president and why somebody was so stressed over who the president is. I'm like, how does that even, get into your reality right now? How does that even affect you in any type of way at all? You're just giving that external stimulus your power. when really you could take your power back and create your own bubble of reality and then literally attract and do whatever you want to do within your bubble of reality. It's what you pay attention to, but people pay attention to all wrong things.
Exactly. I mean, it would be different if we actually had a choice, right? They gave us a menu item. They gave us ham sandwiches and turkey sandwiches, and we didn't want either. We didn't get to choose those people.
Mhm.
It's all an illusion, and then
Yep.
they get you against them, and it's all to create, unfortunately, lower level thinking,
Yes.
the energy and the vibration of hate, fear. Even though Star Wars is a movie, right? It's supposedly not true. There's a lot of truths in that because there's truth in everything.
Mhm.
So there's an energy around everything. There's a frequency around everything, and how we look at it. And there's a battle for not just your soul, but there's a battle for your energy. Somebody, just like in the Matrix, they're sucking off the energy that we have. Some people believe there is a energy system that's living off our fear and our anxiety and our frustration, and something's getting some benefit from it because the universe doesn't do extraneous or useless things, but they misunderstand the power of the universe. It doesn't care. The power only wants to be used. It's like electricity. I can plug a hair dryer in and do my hair, or I can plug in, electric blanket and heat my body. I can do whatever, or I can stick my finger in my mouth and put in this socket and shock myself. Like all those things. It's still the same electricity. It's still the same power.
Yes.
You choose how you use that power. So, like you said, choose that power to be healthy. Choose that power to be a force for good in your life. And what you'll find is that bubble of reality, because even though you might have 5,000 or 20,000 Facebook friends, the reality is that you have close friends, and hopefully you have a good circle of friends. And that's the group we need connection, where no one gets out of here alive, right? So we have soul families, we have groups that, you meet them for the first time, you go, I feel like I've known you my whole life, and these things we tune in because this is not the first time. Like I said, this is a recycling program. Now once you get to that cycle, just like during the day, we have nighttime, we have morning, we have afternoon, we have evening. That cycle, we have cycles in our body. They're not just for women. Men have cycles. Everybody has. Our jobs have cycles. They like in relationships, they call it the 7-year itch. Like when people are in relationships. Now that doesn't have to be, but that's the way it typically is for people. Just like houses, the average person never buys their house because they refinance it every 5 years. They don't realize that they're playing into a system that they're never paying off their house.
Right.
Because they're only paying on interest. So they figured out a way through usury to get all of our money.
Mm.
But if you step outside of it and say, hey, there's something going on here. What can I do to change this? There are solutions to every problem, because you can't have a problem without a solution. And you can have a solution without problems. So and this is what the mystics would say is what they call it 360-degree wisdom, which means you look at it from, they call it the wise dome or wisdom. So when you think about the dome being 360 degrees, when you get into that enlightenment phase where you start looking at my past brought me to this moment, where's it taking me in the future? How's it interacting with my people? What am I going to do today to make this a better place? That circle of influence, or that sphere of influence, that's what moves with you. And you can affect that. Now, what I'm saying earlier, the one research they did with MIT was they showed that our thoughts actually extend out 10,000 miles.
Wow.
That's influence. And they say there's an electrical field that our brains tap. And now science is proving this. People that aren't metaphysical, they're not spiritual. They're just showing our biological systems are sending out energy. Now we know we can measure those energy, right? We can use EEG, we can use heart rate variability, we can measure all these things. And what it really comes down to is light, sound, and vibration. We're sound and vibration. We're biological. That's what it shows up as, but that's a byproduct. We have to work on all those different levels of our being. But the reality is, until we work on our electrical system, our thoughts, nothing else gets aligned. And that's where that positive thinking and realizing that, hey, you're in control, even as bad as it is. You think about those prisoners in Hanoi that they said they called the Hanoi Hilton, where the prisoners all lived and they had really good lives after being in prison because every day they played golf.
Wow.
But they played it in their mind. They weren't in the prison. Their minds were on the golf course. They kept score. They kept handicaps. They had a whole nother life. Even though their biological body was in a cage, they were actually on their favorite golf courses. And they would talk about it. They would do it. So that shows that it's not what you're physically experiencing, it's what you're mentally perceiving. What is your consciousness perceiving?
Yes. Right. It's all freaking perception. And so many people are stuck in this blame game, victim mentality. I think that's really the pandemic of the world is victim mentality, blame for external stuff that's not even real of your internal way you feel instead of realizing no, everything is just a mirror back to you of what is happening internally with you. So once you change that, then you change your external reality. So, what would you say to people, right, that are in poverty and they just, I have so many of these people like with questions, how do I get started? I do all the meditating, I do all the things, but I don't have the money or I don't have the resources to do.
I'll go back to that story today because money has nothing to do with it.
Boom. Okay.
When I met the people with the first machine called the SIL, Sensory Input Learning System, the guy I was working with, his name is Gil Gilly, and I was the counselor at his church. He was a metaphysical church. He grew up with Ernest Holmes, who started Science of the Mind. This guy could read your mind. He's still alive today, but he can read your mind. If you're sitting across from him, he can tell you what you're thinking. He scares the heck out of you. But he had a show in Vegas, and I used to do some work with him. And he said, go to Vegas, go to Harrods. I have a room there. You're going to meet Linnea there. I had no money. He had to give me money for gas to get there. I didn't need money. I needed an opportunity. But when I got there, I went on this machine, and I swear to God, when I got on this machine the first time, I was in outer space. I was flying in a spaceship, and I was in this spaceship, and I knew everybody in there. I was talking to them, and I was having this experience. It was so rich, so vibrant that it was just as real as here. And then she's waking me up. She says, you got to get up. It's been 45 minutes. And I went, wow. I said, I got to have one of those. And she says, well, you're in luck. We have two of them. They're only $10,000. Now, this was in 1985. So $10,000 was a lot of money. So I didn't have the money, but I kept going back to their booth and doing the sessions. At the end of that experience, they're packing up and they're crying. And I said, Linnea, Larry, what's going on? What's happening? You didn't have a good show? And they go, no, Dr. Robinson, the guy who invented this technology, died. And he didn't tell us how he built it. We have no idea how to rebuild this. And I said, you know what? I went to school first for electronics. I said, where are you going next? And they said, well, we have family in Scottsdale. I said, I have an office in Scottsdale. I said, if you bring this to my office, I can reverse engineer it and we can build it again. Now, the weird part of the story was we exchanged phone numbers. This was before cell phones. So we exchanged phone numbers. I lost their number and they lost mine. 2 weeks after going back to Scottsdale, a friend of mine, Jerry DeShaza, who became one of my greatest mentors, he calls me up. He says, Patrick, I met some people here. I want to bring them by the office. You're going to be there this afternoon. I had no idea who he's bringing. So he shows up. They carry in the sales machine. The universe had to make the appointment. I was sabotaging it. I lost the number. But if you believe, and I knew there was something more because I was a therapist and I knew therapy wasn't working, talking to people. And I mean, it helped them for short terms. But what they really needed was a physiological shift, a change in perception with energy in mind, empowerment that says, hey, everything that's happened to me has happened through me to make me better than I was yesterday, prepare me for the future. And I have no idea where I'm going from here. You know, that's why I feel like I'm still the first day of work. First day of discovering, because every morning I get up and I think, wow, I'm so grateful that I'm able to be a part of this reality. And it's not that everything is always roses. I mean, I'm in business, so people are always trying to rip us off. They're, doing different things. And that's why I have to tell Cynthia every once in a while, I go, it's just a game here. You just have to say, hey, 10% of our money goes to legal to make sure we can keep doing our business, because there's always, when you look at the ocean, there's these critters that swim around, the sharks and whales, and they're just eating off them. There's all these people trying to nip at you. They're always going to try to take what you have, and they can't take your power. There's an infinite amount of energy and power. So I always say, take as much as you need to regulate yourself, because I'll just give more. The more you give away, the more you get. But as soon as you say, hey, there's a limited supply, like, it's not money, it's opportunity. Even in the Bible, which I studied when I was younger, and I still believe it's one of the best books written. But the reality is that it says faith without works is dead. You can't meditate to get rich. You have to do something to get rich. Meditate helps you align your purpose, align your mission, align what you're going to do today. So you start first in the morning with gratitude. What do you have? You have a place to live. You have air to breathe. You have a heart beating. Whatever it is, you just start there. Now that energy will start to attract a greater abundance, then somebody will show up and say, hey, you know what? Why are you smiling so much? What's going on? I need you to be part of my business. And what most people don't realize, like when I started, I had no money. I had nothing. I mean, I came from an alcoholic father, and we had nothing. And Dr. Paul Adams took us in. I worked for 4 years, only making $300 a week.
Wow.
But he taught me anything. And when he went to sell the business, after I helped him build it up, he said, Patrick, just pay me the next payment, which was $9,300. I got to buy the whole franchise. Within 3 years, we were a multi-million-dollar company. I sold it in 2002, but I had to put my time in. So many people think, and it's really funny because I have a talk that I give where I have a picture of a carnation milk chocolate, the one where they put 2 scoops in, you make chocolate milk. But it has a little boot on the front of it, and it says 2 scoops to enlightenment. Because everybody thinks you just take 2 scoops in the morning, you're instantly like, no, that's not the way it works. It happens over time. And if it's too abrupt, if the change is too, that's why there's only a few Sauls on the way to Damascus could get hit by the bolt of light and change their religion. It's usually a slow burn. You change a little bit today, you change a little bit tomorrow. Pretty soon you realize the friends that were holding you back are no longer on your call list. You have spent months since you've seen them. You've got new friends that are helping you to find these opportunities. If you're looking in the same backyard for something that's in New York City, but you live in Florida, and you're not going to find it in Florida. You've got to move your location. You've got to move your consciousness. So when somebody tells me, how do I get abundance? First of all, you already are abundant.
Good.
If you could go back in time 2,000 years ago, most people didn't have half what we have now. Not even a quarter, not even 10%.
Yes.
I mean, can you imagine you have to be a king or queen to have an orchestra play to you? But we can take out our cell phones and listen to any classical Baroque music we want. We can listen to hip hop. We can listen to rock and roll anytime, anywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
There's so much to be in, but if we deny that and say, oh, poor me, that's why in my book, my first book that I wrote was called Awaken the Genius. I have a chapter called How I Was Blessed to be the Son of an Alcoholic. Because if I say, poor me, my dad was an alcoholic, and then I have to be an alcoholic then. I don't have to be an alcoholic. My dad did a really good job at it. He mastered it. I don't need to do that again. I'd be less intelligent if I did that. Who cares? My biology does not dictate my psychology. But so many people, you control that, and they've proven that now. One thing I want to just tell the listeners, one of the sciences that they now have is called epigenetics, right?
Yes.
And most people don't realize in 2003, when they said they mapped the human genome, and everybody went crazy, we're going to change history. And now they found out they can't do crap with DNA, right?
Yeah.
But in 2018, they realized that 99% they said was junk DNA. Actually epigenetic, which means it operates above the genetic code, which means your thoughts, the foods, the lighting, everything about you that we're biohacking, it all changes your DNA expression. And now they know if I could take your DNA, Elisabeth, and anchor it to the floor where you're at right now, we could expend it out into the universe. It would go beyond Pluto. That's in right now.
Right.
And that DNA now is a crystalline viscous substance that absorbs light energy as codes and transmits those codes through your body. And they now know the reason they couldn't track it in 2003 was that code in your body changes about every 40 seconds. Every DNA pair has to reimagine itself every 40 seconds. So everyone listening, you're not the same person you were at the beginning of this podcast. You are new. You are different. So the worst thing that happens to people, I call it the dragons of the past. They keep dragging the past into the present.
Yes.
They're not your past self. That's why sometimes relationships don't work out, or jobs don't work out, or plans don't work out, because you're not the same person. But it's okay because it's all part of learning. It's all part of what we're doing. But you have to be open to the new experiences, because who knows where we're going to be 10 years from now.
Right. So freaking good. Oh my God, I'm so inspired right now. Like, yes, all of this is so, oh my God, it's so on point. It's so on point. You literally can, it's one choice away from having a better life. One choice away from having a better life. One thought away from having a better life. Just step out of that victimhood and take your power back, because you have the power to create anything you want. Literally.
and it's all here. It's all here right now. There's no waiting for it. I mean, what would be different if you had $1 million in the bank or you didn't? It would be you'd have $1 million in the bank, but your biological system is still the same.
Yes.
So act as if. And then it'll have to manifest into the space around you.
Yes.
It doesn't have a choice. It has to do that.
Exactly. You have to match your vibration. You have to match your frequency to that reality. And then it doesn't have a choice to show up in the third dimension. That's what I tell people. You have to literally vibrate at that frequency, act as that person that you want to be. You don't want anything first of all, because when you want something, that means you don't have it. You have to have it now. It's all here right now. Embody it as if now. Well,
I always tell people frequency is what you frequently see.
Yeah.
So think of frequency. What do you frequently see? That's your frequency. So if you're a high frequency person, you see high frequency activities, you see high frequency foods, you see high frequency opportunities. If you're low frequency, you see low frequency opportunities, low frequency people, low frequency energy. So you got to change your frequency, just like changing the dial on a radio. What frequency do you want to be? And you get to set that frequency. Now, at first, it's going to be uncomfortable. So you have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You might stumble around and not do it well. But our biological system will match our psychological system and our spiritual system because those are operating all at different levels. And there's more systems. We're worlds within ourselves, besides the worlds that are around us, all the frequencies and everything that's happening to us. But we have a center. If we can get that center and stay focused, then, I mean, I can tell you what happened between, and I was told early on through the Coptics, I don't know if you've probably heard of the Coptics, right? So when I was getting help, I had an experience where I was actually healed in the hospital, and I had a bisulfite poisoning, and I instantly healed by an 8-foot golden being. And I didn't understand what that was because I only knew Jesus. And so I started researching it. And so somebody said, you need to go see this guy, John Davis. He's the head of the Coptics, and he does this thing called numerology. And this was back in the 80s. I didn't know anything about it. He looked at me after he did my reading, and he told my dad, he said, if you're going to go into business with somebody, go into business with Patrick. He says, why? He says, because he's missing his 8s, which means his karma is money, but his destiny is an 8188. My destiny is to make money. So I've always done that. Even when I was younger, I always worked. I always had jobs. I always had mowing jobs. I never hurt for money, even though our house was really poor. I never was. That was part of my nature. So, but there are other parts of me that I had to work on. But and somebody says to me, I'm always perplexed when somebody says money. I said, money's easy. I remember there's something called Nichiren Daisho in Buddhism. You might have heard of it before. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they chant it. So I was trying to find out what is the best method for enlightenment. So I joined Nichiren Daisho in Buddhism. Okay. Everybody knows you need to be a Buddhist, right? But what happened was I get this thing, and they bring the priest over from Japan who's going to give you your Gohanzan, which is your life, and you get to chant that the rest of your life. So I'm in the crowd. There's like 1,000 people there. The priest comes back, and I'm there with him. And he's walking back. He stops at my pew. It was a church. And he says, he didn't talk English, but the guy with him says, do you want to speak to the priest? Yeah, out of all these people, there were like 5 of us that got to go back to the back, and I was chosen. So I'm sitting there, and in the middle of our conversation, this was in the 80s, he takes out a cigarette. Well, one thing, you want to turn me off, just light up a cigarette, right? So the guy goes, what happened? Why did you do that? When I said, well, I can help you with that because I had a stop smoking clinic, right? So the universe was showing me that this is an enlightened being having a cigarette. And I thought, I guess this isn't it. This nice Nichiren Daisho in Buddhism isn't it, because why would he need a cigarette if he was going to do it? And he said, well, my master would smoke 1 cigarette a day. And when he died, the only thing he had in his possession was a pack of cigarettes. So I started smoking them. But he proceeded to smoke 4 cigarettes that night. So I said, 1 cigarette a day, I could see that's not a problem. It's not what you do once in a while. It's what you do consistently, right? So that taught me, so it's okay to smoke if you want to. It's okay to do whatever. I don't really care. But if that's what's controlling you, when they talk about like alcohol too, I said, there's a reason they call it spirits. Because when in AA, when they say alcohol is more powerful than you, that's only when you put it in your body. Because you become a different spirit, right? Your inhibitions go down. You have permission to do different things you wouldn't do, and all these crazy things. And so the reality is that we need to know that we control our destiny, not our external forces. Right. And that night, I never did the Gahanzan again. I mean, I know that but I thought that's not it. And I've been through so many of these different things, traveled India, went around the world, studied in Wudang with Tai Chi masters in the temples. And I realized that there's no one way for everyone.
Mhm.
You've got to find your own path. You got to find your own way. And usually it's an evolution. So
Yes.
you do something and to the point that it doesn't work for you anymore. It's not a bad thing because there's no there. You learned all you could from that experience. Go to the next experience because the next experience is going to be even better. There's going to be something else that's going to open up. It's going to open up your mind, your body, your experiences. You're going to have more joy, more love, more happiness because we're just scratching the surface right now. You know,
Yes. Yes, exactly. So, oh my God, so freaking good. So let's circle right back to BrainTap, okay? And let's tell people. So, thoughts create reality. And a lot of people get stuck in negative thought patterns and they just, have so much trouble getting out of those patterns. And I know for a fact BrainTap helps with that. So what would you advise people to do? Like what type of protocols? I mean, how would you advise people to use it?
you share the links with them, they can do the 21-day protocol we have, quick start, because the first thing we have to do is we have to interrupt the pattern that's already. You have a pattern in your life from your thoughts to your actions to your deeds. That's what every day. And if you might not be able to see it because it's like the two fish swimming in the water and somebody says, water, what's water? They're swimming in it. They don't understand that, so you have to take a perspective. You have to disassociate. So the other thing is once you know you have a pattern, you've got to change it. That's going to take energy. That's where BrainTap comes in. It's going to take mental energy to do that neural pruning because we're on autopilot most of the time. I mean, some people think they're controlling everything. You're not controlling anything.
Nope.
You can be on the roller coaster ride and having a great time and can scream your head off in fear. But you're going to be on that roller coaster. Some days it's going to be really good. It's going to be great. And you're going to tell everybody about it. Some days it's not going to be so great because that's the cycle of life. We have to do it. But if we can learn to take the lows not so low and the highs not so high, and just kind of go with the flow and realize that, we're in the right place at the right time. The biggest thing with BrainTap is like I said earlier, there's 3 times a day you need to reset your brain. In the morning, we want to reset the brain. A lot of people use coffee to do this. I recommend you don't drink your coffee till 10 o'clock in the morning because the most powerful pharmacy on earth is not in the corner drugstore. It's between your ears. So if you want to create norepinephrine, dopamine, and cortisol, you need to do some breath work, like we call it psychological breathing, which is a deep breath in, a complete breath out. You can do it that way. Or BrainTap, where we use light, sound, and vibration to create the SMR brainwave, sensory motor rhythm. This is the one as we get better looking and more intelligent with age, this is the one that atrophies, right? So then when we do our studies, we show that's the brainwave. That's also the brainwave that happens to atrophy under stress. And when somebody has autism or they have dementia. So when we increase that, all those things disappear because they're not part of that frequency. Now, in the middle of the day, when we have that biological low, most people will go get another coffee or they'll go get chocolate or they'll go get some food. And usually it's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. I'm not talking about biohackers out there. I'm talking about people that just in general. So what we really need is a biological reset, like I said. So those sessions are theta and gamma. And what they do is they reset you to understand that you're a spiritual being having a physical experience, not a physical being trying to be spiritual. That's a misnomer. You can't be more than you are. You're not this, like the Sufis say, the seer can never be the seen.
Yeah.
So whatever you're seeing, you're not that. But if you go too far into it, you go down the rabbit hole, you start becoming a little crazy. But so you have this flow that you do. So you reset because when you're biologically low, you can be pushed and manipulated. You're just so tired and so worn out. Okay, I give up. I'll do it. But if you have energy and you're positive, you say, hell no. This is my place. This is my space, And then at night, we have sessions that put you to sleep because at night, that sleeping cycle is when you incubate your superpowers.
Yes.
So 2/3 of the world is not. That's one of the most important times to use brain fitness. So in the app, we have 3,000 sessions, and hopefully we're going to have your sessions on there soon.
Yeah.
Because it's what we find is that you can do it, of course, without having the encoding. But we've actually shown that when you use the encoding, that same message will last in the biological system of a person up to 72 hours. Where most of the time when people do a meditation or to do a relaxation or listen to music, it only happens while you're doing it. The body, and then the body goes right back to its stress state because it hasn't learned anything. It just had an experience. It's like going to the movies. It's not really life changing. It might be a really good movie, but you can take that movie and make it life changing. So your body actually felt like that whatever that message was, whatever that experience was actually had some result in the future. Then your body starts to predict the future using that piece of information. So you change the way you live your life. That's really what we want to have done. And BrainTap has a sequence to that. And there's thousands of sessions, but that 21 days is a good way to start because I picked them out just to get the brain training started.
Okay, run that back really quick. So if I put let's say I did a morning gratitude to attract abundance into your life. So if we put that meditation onto BrainTap because of light, sound, vibration, now it stays in your.
You know, we do a lot of work with ketamine, psilocybin in there, and they always talk about the set and setting.
Yes.
Right. So somebody meditates, but their room's all messed up and they just got an argument with somebody. Now they're going to go sit and meditate. That's not going to work. We need to get the biological system into a place of peace and harmony and move it. It can't stay the same. So if we're sitting next to a river doing it, or we're sitting in the mountains, our body is going to biologically match that experience. But we can't go to the mountains all the time. We can't go to the river all the time. But guess what? We can hack the body by using light, sound, and vibration to get them there. So they're going to be in the best learning state. They actually, in music, they call it the Mozart effect. They've actually proven if you listen to Mozart's music, like Baroque classical music, you are actually smarter while it's playing. Your brain actually works better. So think about that. So we took that same principle and we used it with light, sound, and vibration. So now, not only are you thinking in your best way, but you have energy to think about it. Now you have that energy, and so now you take that great message and you've imprinted it through emotion, because it's the emotion that's going to drive the behavior, not the words. You know, if you don't have the emotion behind the words, like when somebody says, "I know you don't love me," I can tell, but they're saying the words, but you don't feel it. You've got to embody the emotion, that energy in motion, and that means that you have the neurological activity happening that creates a field around you. That field is what attracts what you want. And it does it without your awareness because you planned it in the morning, you reset it in the middle of the day, you reinforced it at night. Now you live your life. It's like set it and forget it. You don't have to, you're going to be, the mystics don't run around all day long chanting. They hear the music of this while they're doing everything. It's just there. It's just part of their nature. We tend to think that there's this or that. There isn't this or that. There's only this. And as soon as we think there's a that, we disassociate from this and we're disconnected from the energy in the field and the flow. So that's where BrainTap comes in. So any piece of music, like at Quantum University, where I'm the dean of brain-based medicine, we took their courses and I turned them into BrainTap sessions for reinforcement. So now when we take somebody through the natural medicine program, instead of it taking them 4 years, they can do it in as little as 6 months with better memory, better recall, because our education system is broken. We learn very different than what we think.
Yes.
Think as a child, you could learn so many things when you were a child. And then as we get older, we think it's difficult to learn. No, we don't have the energy to learn. If we bring the energy to the equation, then we can learn better, faster, and have greater results.
Dude. Oh my God, I freaking love it. You know what I do? Dr. Porter? I sit on top of my biomat, right? And I have 2 panels of red light behind me. I put my BrainTap on and I lay there and I meditate. And that's how I've been able to literally just walk through my hard time.
Right. Yeah, because you're building up energy. Those cells are absorbing that light energy. Dr. Carson said this in 20 years ago. He said, the most underprescribed nutrient on earth is light.
Yes.
So we are light beings. So everything we eat, everything we drink, everything we do is to create that ATP, but it's really the interaction, the energy that it creates through the mitochondria. So if we can directly deliver that into the body, that's why so many things are changing about health, like lasers and everything we're doing. I mean, we're just at the very beginning of this magical journey.
Yes. That's so true. I mean, I think everybody has seen it too. Even, going through something very hard like this makes it seem like I would age and it would make you stressed and just wrinkly and all this. But I've reversed aged myself, even in physical form, like the way that I look, because I've stayed true to the lesson and continuing in gratitude and alignment. And
you look younger than when I saw you a year ago.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Right. Oh,
So I'm walking proof that if you change your attitude, if I mean, I have to give it to you. BrainTap like really, really helped me move through the hard times, and probably because I had enough energy to do it.
cool. Yeah. One thing that when you have energy, you can handle those tough times. When you don't have energy, down. When you feel like every morning you get up and your energy is drained, that's why people with the autoimmune disorders that they have today, they need to get their cells working in, because when your body just drains, it's like having a battery that has a ground, that all your energy is being. Now grounding is good, I'm not trying to say that, but when you think about batteries, you don't want to have a battery with a negative ground.
Mm-hmm.
You never keep a charge.
Yes.
So we need to have a positive ground, which means that it's recycling. The energy is recycling. That's why, like when you walk in the earth, you know this because Clint Oper and the gang. So what you think about is, we're part of this whole system. There's no separation.
Yep.
So in just knowing that, I mean, obviously it'd be nice if my first marriage worked out. That was 30, almost 40 years ago. It didn't, and I have a great wife I've been married to for 35 years. So those things, the first one had to end so I could get the next one. And I wasn't willing to settle on the second one.
Yeah.
And not that I settled on the first one. I didn't know. I was 19 years old. I only had. So, I didn't have thinking powers at that point. So those are things that happen.
Well, it's all divine. It's all perfect. And I've really come into that knowing that everything is happening for you, and it's all happening for your divine, purposeful, creation on the planet. So, Dr. Porter, give me just the biggest piece of advice that you have for the listeners before we get out of here.
I think the biggest advice I like to share with people is, you are far greater than you've been led to believe. You have capacities that you've never even considered, with resources you've never even thought about, because you've limited your ability. Just understand that there's an infinite number of possibilities for success in any one moment in time. There's only an infinite number of possibilities. So when you think about that, but if you limit it to say there's only one possibility, like I'm only happy with this person, I'm only happy if they get this job, I'm only happy if I drive this car, that limits you. Yeah. There's something better for you. Yes. Open the field, and the perceptual filters will open, and your life will get better. I guarantee you. It doesn't have a choice. It has to.
Yes. I freaking love it. I love it. Dr. Porter, do you have anything new coming out? Where can people find you?
They can go to, you're going to share the link with BrainTap, but if they want to follow me, I'm at drpatrickporter.com. And I have a YouTube channel. We don't always talk like this. I love talking to you because I get to talk outside of science. Yes. Like the doctor. So if one of my doctors sees this, I go, "What the? Did he fall off a wagon or something?" But the reality is that the way it's all a game, really, because but now because science is proving it, I get to slide it into the doctors, and they start to realize before they know it, they're inside the bubble, and they realize, oh my God, it's real.
Yeah.
But before they got outside the bubble, it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So, but I also have a new book coming out. Hay House is publishing my new book in October called Brain Fitness Blueprint, where a lot of this information, the science backing of it, is in there. And I think that book's going to be amazing, and it's going to come out in October. And we're always doing new things. I would love to be able to report that we have your sessions coming out on the BrainTap app. We just released a new series with BrainTap with a community called Lucid, which is one of the largest communities of sobriety, relationships, and things like that. And they have 340,000 users. And we did a series with MJ Gottlieb, and we just released that. So, a lot of people, not just biohackers, are realizing that, you don't have to be under some kind of influence to have a relationship. A lot of people thought, you have to either be drunk or high or whatever to do it. So it's a wellness community, and they really built it up. So what I've done with MJ is we put together a series. That's the newest series we put out. But there's always new series coming out. So if they tune into BrainTap, we'll keep sharing. And a lot of science. I mean, we have a lot of science that's unfortunately, it's not what we're talking about here. It's real hard science that they do at universities and things like that. But we're proving this out. And the more I can match it to the quantum field, the better. Because I think that's the future, is quantum medicine.
Yes.
People are going to understand that the energy field is where the real solutions are, not the biological field. That's a secondary. That's too downstream. We want to go right to the source.
Uh-huh. Amazing. I can't wait to put my meditations on there. That's gonna be exciting. So let's do that soon. Let's definitely do that soon.
Good. Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Porter. Every time I talk to you, my brain is just and it's just so positive, and you get me so inspired. And I know the listeners are just gonna love all of your information. You're just a wealth of it, and you're such just like a light in this on this earth. And thank you so much for the work that you do and how many people you affect positively. It's just, it was such an honor. It's always an honor to have you. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you. We're on a mission to better a billion brains. So listeners, if you're listening now, it's your brain we're talking about. So let's change that field. Remember, you're affecting 10,000 miles around you. So let's be positive and affect those people. So I think we're going to make a change in this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Porter. And guys, until next time, this was another episode of Unlimited. Peace, peace, peace.
Is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and don't necessarily reflect those of the producers or affiliates. We do not guarantee the accuracy of the content. Please verify information and seek professional advice when needed. By listening, you agree not to hold us liable for any actions taken based on this content. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you enjoy the episodes ahead. Love unlimited, feel unlimited.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to stay on this journey with me. There is so much more ahead. Courses, mentoring, healing circles, retreats, safe spaces to heal and grow. Make sure you subscribe, follow, and stay connected. We are not alone. In this journey, we're on it together.